A massage chair might seem a bit extravagant, especially these days. 8 different settings, adjustable intensity, plus it's heated, and it just feels so good. Yes, a massage chair might seem a bit extravagant, but when it can come with a car, suddenly it seems quite practical. The all-new 2025 Volkswagen Tiguan, packed with premium features like available massaging front seats, it only feels extravagant.
Now more than ever, Lowe's knows you don't just want a low price, you want the lowest price. And with our lowest price guarantee, you can count on us for competitive prices on all your home improvement projects. If you find a qualifying lower price somewhere else on the same item, we'll match it. Lowe's, we help, you save. Price match applies to same item, current price at qualifying retailers. Exclusions and terms apply. Learn how we'll match price at lowes.com/lowest price guarantee.
And away we go, episode 1106 of the Al Galdi podcast. It is Friday, July 4th, 2025. It is Independence Day. It is the birthday of this country, the United States of America. This is the day that commemorates the ratification of the Declaration of Independence by the Second Continental Congress on July 4th, 1776, establishing the United States of America, which now is 249 years old. The USA now entering its age 249 season. And yes, there is an installment of this podcast for this 4th of July. We hope you have a great July 4th weekend. Hello and welcome to this Friday installment of the Al Galdi podcast. 11 days from July 4th is July 15th. That is the deadline by which the Commanders and Washington, D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser want the D.C. Council to vote on the deal for a Commander Stadium on the RFK Stadium site. But there seems to be an increasing likelihood that the Council will not be voting on the deal by July 15th. Next segment, a deep dive on what the heck is happening, as we'll speak with Eric Flack, Chief Investigative Reporter for WUSA9. Eric has been tremendous in covering the Commander Stadium saga over the last few years, and he has some great intel for us, including why August should be viewed as the new deadline as opposed to July 15th, how angry Commanders ownership, the Josh Harris Group, is about what's going on, whether the stadium being open for the 2030 season, as is the goal, is in jeopardy, the, shall we say, fuzzy math that's a big part of the D.C. Council's concern with the stadium deal, the possibility of, wait for it, President Donald Trump getting involved in this situation. All of that and more. Eric Flack, next segment, with high-level insight on the Commander Stadium deal as it relates to the D.C. Council. Also on the show, I'll talk Nationals. They beat the American League-leading Detroit Tigers 11-7 at Nationals Park on Thursday evening to win the series 2-1, as James Wood had an all-time Thursday. Wood on Instagram on Thursday afternoon announced that he will be participating in the 2025 T-Mobile Home Run Derby, which is happening at Truist Park in Georgia on Monday night, July 14th. And Wood, in this win over the Tigers on Thursday evening as the Nats starting left fielder and number 2 batter, went 5 for 5. Yes, 5 for 5 with a solo homer, an RBI single, and 3 other singles. Quite the day for James Wood and the Nats, the boys, as Nats manager Davey Martinez likes to say.
I'm proud of the boys.
Yes, thank you, the boys. Before we get to some feedback, no Nikolai Ehlers for the Capitals, but they have made a significant re-signing. Nikolai Ehlers had been the number 1 unrestricted free agent forward this NHL offseason. The Caps reportedly were in on him, but the Carolina Hurricanes, they on Thursday afternoon announced having signed Ehlers to a 6-year contract worth $8.5 million per season. From Caps insider Tarek El-Bashir of Monumental Sports Network in a post on X on Thursday afternoon, quote, "The Caps were indeed in on Nikolai Ehlers until the end. On the ice, the fit was there for the player and team. He chose Carolina." End quote. Would have been nice to have him as a top 6 forward for the Caps. However, The Caps on Thursday night announced having re-signed unrestricted free agent winger Anthony Beauvillier to a 2-year, $5.5 million contract. The Caps, this past March 7th, what was 2025 NHL trade deadline day, traded a second-round pick in the 2025 NHL draft to the Pittsburgh Penguins for Beauvillier. He was not great for the Caps in the regular season, but he was good for them in the postseason. You can hit me up on X at Al Galdi. You can email me, the Al Galdi podcast at yahoo.com. Email from Redskins fan on the Commanders' defense and NFL defenses in general, writes Redskins fan. Lots of times people label defenses bad by numbers, but I don't think that the numbers tell the whole story. I've seen a lot of good defenses get torched because those defenses spend far too long on the field. I wonder if anyone has done a deep dive on so-called bad defenses, how many times those defenses spent over half of the time on the field, and what type of field position did those defenses have to deal with? Also, if you knew you were going to lose, how hard would you play? Me, personally, I always try to do my best, but I don't really see that in everybody. Looking forward to hearing your thoughts. Well, thank you for the email, Redskins fan. Well, there's a chicken and egg thing here. Bad defenses that spend a lot of time on the field. Is that because the bad defense is on a team with a bad offense, or is that because the defense is bad, i.e. the defense keeps giving up third down conversions? I'm big on analytics. I like to assess offense and defense in the NFL with stats like DVOA and EPA per play, rate stats as opposed to counting stats. And these are rate stats that factor in context, down distance, score, etc. The Commanders for the 2024 regular season had the following rankings, and number 23 in the NFL in total defense per Aaron Schatz's DVOA metric. Number 22 in the NFL in expected points added allowed per play, EPA allowed per play per RBSDM.com. Not good. As far as the effort factor that Redskins fan brought up, no doubt effort can be a thing. It's just often really hard to know with certainty when effort is a thing. Like, how do you differentiate between a player not trying hard and a player just not being very good? That can be tricky. Email from Michael King on the Nationals, the Commanders QB1, and more. Writes Mike, great to have you back. Hope you had a great time while you were away. I haven't written in a while because what is left to say about the Nats? Still no accountability. May as well trade Mackenzie Gore and James Wood now. Start the rebuild of the rebuild. I do think that Terps Lacrosse may be a monster next year. And Jaden Daniels, so fun. Team name unspeakable. I am wary of the defense and its coordinator. Have a great weekend, Al. Just want to say, always listening to both shows, the best in town, still by a good bit. Thank you. Well, thank you very much for that, Mike. Mike, an avid listener of this podcast and also the Nats Chat podcast that I do with Nats insider Mark Zuckerman of MASNsports.com. Who knows to what degree there is accountability with the Nats right now, given how checked out team ownership the Lerner family may well be. But there absolutely should be accountability. This is season number 5 of the Nats rebuild, which started with the massive fire sale in late July 2021. The Nats in MLB's 2025 regular season have the second worst record in the National League. The team should be much further along in its rebuild, as I've been saying, and I feel like I'm the only person in the media saying this, but as I've been saying, the Nats rebuild isn't working. Now, I am willing to give Nats president of baseball operations and general manager Mike Rizzo and Nats manager Davey Martinez until the end of this season. I do think that they've earned the right to play out the season and see where it goes. Maybe things get better for the Nats over the final 3 months of this regular season. But right now, at this point in time, the Nats rebuild isn't working. And keep this in mind. Davey Martinez is not under contract for next season. The Nats on August 22nd, 2023 officially announced having agreed with Martinez on a multi-year contract extension. The extension reportedly was a 2-year contract extension with an option for a third season. Well, that third season is next season, so he is not under contract for next season. And oh, by the way, the word is that the deadline by which this option needs to be picked up is at some point this month. What we don't know is the contract status of Mike Rizzo. Now, the Nats on September 13th, 2023 officially announced having agreed with Rizzo on a multi-year contract extension, but the details of that extension, as far as I know, have never been revealed via any reporting. And of course, looming over all of this is ownership. The Lerner family. Is it checked out? April 11th, 2022 was when we learned that the Lerner family had begun exploring selling the Nats. February 19th, 2024, President's Day 2024, was when we learned that the Lerner family was no longer exploring selling the Nats. But I've never believed that the Lerner family still isn't interested in selling the team. Once you put it out there that you are exploring selling the team, that is out there. You can't undo that. The toothpaste is out of the tube, and I do believe that if the right offer came along, the Lerner family would sell the Nats. And regarding the Nats trading left fielder James Wood and starting pitcher Mackenzie Gore to, as Mike wrote, quote, start the rebuild of the rebuild, end quote. A, that was funny. B, do you know that Gore now is at the same point contractually that outfielder Juan Soto was at when the Nats traded him and first baseman Josh Bell to the San Diego Padres August 2nd, 2022, MLB trade deadline day 2022. This for a package of players that, of course, included Wood and Gore. Wood is under team control through the 2030 season. We have a ways to go until he's a free agent, but Gore is only under team control through the 2027 season. Soto was traded in 2022 when he was under team control through the 2024 season. Amazing how quickly time moves. Time flies when you're in the midst of a lengthy rebuild.
NetCredit is here to say yes to a personal loan or line of credit when other lenders say no. Apply in minutes and get a decision as soon as the same day. Loans offered by NetCredit or lending partner banks and serviced by NetCredit. Application subject to review and approval. Learn more at netcredit.com/partners. NetCredit. Credit to the people.
Hey, if you happen to be listening to this podcast on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, you can write a review of the podcast saying that you like it. The review could be just a sentence or two, but the reviews help out the podcast a lot. Thank you for doing them. It was on April 28th that we had the press conference at the National Press Club in Washington, D.C., announcing the deal between the Washington Commanders and Washington, D.C., for the Commanders' next stadium to be on the RFK Stadium land in D.C. Commanders managing partner Josh Harris, NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell, and D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser all spoke at the presser. Here was Harris.
When our ownership group started on this journey 2 years ago, we laid out three clear priorities: build a championship caliber team, improve fan experience, and make a positive impact on this community. Today's announcement is a key part of that vision. Let's come home.
Yeah, the press conference was a big deal, was a festive deal, a lot of pomp and circumstance, but as we noted at the time, the stadium deal was not totally in effect. The deal still needs to be approved by the Council of the District of Columbia, a.k.a. the D.C. Council. Both the Commanders and Mayor Bowser have wanted a July 15th deadline by which the D.C. Council votes on the deal, but it lately has more and more been seeming as if the D.C. Council will not be voting on the deal by July 15th. D.C. Council Chairman Phil Mendelson, he on June 25th introduced legislation to remove the stadium deal from Mayor Bowser's budget. Also, we this past Monday evening reportedly had Commanders ownership, the Josh Harris Group, hosting members of the D.C. Council at Cafe Milano in Georgetown in D.C. What exactly is going on here? To what extent is the stadium deal in jeopardy? I am very pleased to welcome back to the Al Galdi podcast, Eric Flack, Chief Investigative Reporter for WUSA9. Eric, for years now, has been doing an outstanding job of covering the Commander Stadium saga. You can follow Eric on X at Eric Flack TV. Hey, Eric, how are you?
Oh, I'm good. This is quite a saga, isn't it?
Yes, it is. You know that as well as anyone. Do you believe that the D.C. Council will vote on the stadium deal by July 15th?
No way. I don't think you can find one person on the council, even council members, who support the deal without reservations, that thinks they will vote on the stadium deal by July 15th. They're solely focused on the budget, one of the most complicated budgets they've had to deal with in years. And there is just too much momentum to address the stadium issue on its own merits as its own debate rather than wrapping it up into this entire budget question, which they're dealing with right now.
Is there any chance that the stadium deal will be in the budget?
The stadium deal has already been pulled out of the budget. The stadium deal could technically get put back into the budget as they vote on the budget through some procedural stuff I'm not even going to bore you with. But there's no indication that the stadium deal is going to be put back in the budget because the majority of council members want to address it on its own. So as we sit here right now talking on 4th of July weekend, the stadium deal is out of the budget with the intent to kind of take it up once the budget issue is settled on its own.
Scale of 1 to 10, how angry is the Josh Harris group about all of this?
Frustrated. I think 6 or 7 out of 10. Look, I mean, I don't know what they expected. I guess what they expected was everybody would be so happy that they struck a deal to bring the Commanders back in D.C., that D.C. Council would just rubber stamp it. Josh Harris should know from his experience in Philadelphia trying to build a downtown arena for the 76ers, which went on for years and years only to have that process upended at the last second. And now they're going to build the Sixers' new arena out where the old one was, which is what fans ultimately wanted. He should know that none of this happens easily, but you certainly get the sense that ownership is frustrated because they have a timeline, they have a plan in mind where they want to break ground, get this process moving, and they have a very clear vision about when they want to open this stadium in 2030 and all the things they want to do with it coming out of the gate. And that their timeline is getting kind of tinkered with by DC Council, and they don't appreciate that for sure.
The goal is for the Commander Stadium on the RFK Stadium site in D.C. to be open for the 2030 season. To what extent is that in danger?
Ooh, that's the $1 million question. I don't think it's in jeopardy now. I think the team wants us to think that with every passing week, it becomes more and more in jeopardy. And they also, with the opening of the stadium, they have be a timeline being important. They also point to the bidding process to be a host city for the 2031 Women's World Cup, which would be amazing. And that bidding process, happens long before 2031. Those cities are selected long before 2031. And I think the thinking is the stadium has to be far enough along in construction that they can be the World Cup people, the FIFA people can be assured that there's going to be a stadium to play games in. So I think council members are skeptical that the timeline is as threatened as the Commanders want us to believe. And I'm not saying I believe one side or the other. I'm just saying I think the Commanders want us to believe that if this debate stretches past August, that the timeline really starts to begin to be threatened. And I get the sense from talking to council members that they don't necessarily believe just by extending it into, let's say, September, that timeline, that we're going to cost ourselves anything. And I think I don't know. I've never built a, $4 billion stadium. I don't know if you have, Al, but I don't know where the truth lies. And I think that's where we are right now.
That April 28th press conference at the National Press Club in D.C., in hindsight, was that presser too celebratory, or did the presser have to be that way?
That's a great question. I think that if we want to compare this to the monumental deal to move to Virginia that fell apart, and they had that wonderful press conference out of nowhere. We all got the press announced. We all kind of got the release the day before, and everybody's like, oh my God. I mean, that news seemingly broke overnight. This one was more of a slow burn. I don't think the Commanders was that, where they had set up the Monumental and Leonsis had set up any sort of infrastructure to get that deal passed. This was not that. This was a term sheet had been signed with the mayor, which is the first of two major steps to get the Commanders stadium built in D.C. So there was a huge thing to celebrate, which was an agreement in principle. I certainly think that council members felt like they were not involved in the process enough before that press conference happened, at least some. And those are the council members who want to kind of slow this roll a little bit and say, hey, we don't think the mayor got a good enough deal for the city. We think we need to negotiate a little bit better deal with the city. Now, that's kind of like agreeing to buy a car and then asking the car salesman, hey, can we negotiate on terms a little bit more? I mean, the toothpaste is out of the tube. So I still don't think that there's any council members, a majority of council members who are saying we're not going to vote for this, kind of like, so many people came out in the Virginia state legislature and said, we're not going to approve this. We don't agree with this. I don't think we're there, but I think council members certainly want some issues addressed before they vote on it. And I think that, press conference certainly assumed their cooperation, whether that was intentional or not, kind of assumed their cooperation a little bit too early.
Regarding the notion of the stadium deal not being good for D.C., so Mayor Bowser's office on April 28th put out a graphic of public investment as a percentage of stadium and parking development costs. Just 24% of this project is being paid for via public investment. Compare that with the New Orleans Saints project for a stadium and parking development, 67% public investment. The Tennessee Titans project for a stadium and parking development, 60% public investment. The Jacksonville Jaguars project for a stadium and parking development, 50% public investment. Was that graphic misleading, or as best as you can tell, was that graphic truthful?
So when I've reported on that statistic as far as percentage, the day one of that press conference, I went to the mayor's people and the commander's people, and I said, well, but talk to me about dollars, though. Let's not do percentages. Let's do dollars. How does this deal compare dollar-wise for public investment? And I think dollar-wise, it's either the most amount of money or the second most amount of money, dollar for dollar, taxpayers have ever put up for a stadium. So while, yes, the private investment is bigger and the percentage of public dollars are small relatively, the total amount of money taxpayers are putting in for this stadium is actually pretty high. Now, you could argue that stadiums just cost more and this stadium is going to be amazing. And, if the Harris team is putting up this record amount of private investment, which that's true, it is a record amount of private investment, then we should be expected to put out a record amount of public investment as well. But the problem is with all these, and, this argument has just spun out of control. Are the economic projections with these stadiums ever true to life? Meaning, do municipalities ever truly make back the investment to the extent that they are promised on the front side? And, Truist Park in Atlanta is a big one that I've reported on, that a lot of people have reported on, where you've got certain economists who say, Georgia taxpayers, county taxpayers there in Atlanta were promised X amount of investment, and it's never materialized from what they put into Truist Park. If you go to Truist Park, if you've ever been to a Braves game and you've gone to the Battery, which is very much in line with what they want to build. I talked to a Commanders team source about where they are in this planning process. And so if you kind of want to envision what the surrounding part of the new RFK would look like from a retail entertainment pregame, postgame party perspective, they point to the Battery, which is the kind of like party area outside of Truist Park in outside of Atlanta. It's awesome. What they have in Atlanta is awesome. And it's really, really fun for a family. I've taken my kids there. It's really successful. So, if they're going to do that in DC, you have to be able to separate dollar for dollar what you bring back from a tax revenue perspective and what kind of price can you put on just the experience that people are getting from it and what it's bringing to a community.
I have to say this, analyzing the cost of a Commander Stadium for DC from the perspective of raw dollars as opposed to, say, rate data seems ridiculous. I mean, we over the last few years have had extreme inflation in this country. A dollar today is not worth what a dollar was worth 5 years ago. So you shouldn't go by raw dollars. You got to go by percentage cost data.
Right. And I think, those are the things that council members and I think the public are wrestling with right now. And DC needs investment. That area desperately needs investment. And, you've got Nadeau, Councilmember Nadeau, who's one of the definite no votes on this project. And, her argument is, but, with all this money, and I've talked to other, staff members and people at the Wilson Building with DC Council, we were investing all this money, but what else could we do with that money that would still provide economic investment? The problem is there's no plan B. It's not like they're voting, okay, we could do A, a stadium, or B, a music amphitheater with all the same development. Well, there is no other plan. And there are council members and people up at the Wilson Building who say, well, all the developers are scared to challenge and nobody wants to come up with a competing plan because they'll just get run over by the mayor and her team. And, I don't know all about all that. But the truth is, right now we have the stadium or blank. And if you've ever been to Southeast in that area, Ward 7 and Ward 8, they desperately want the economic development. This is right on the border for them. And that area needs something. And the idea of, $2.7 billion in private investment going into that area seems like a good thing to a lot of people.
Much more with Eric Flack in moments, but a congratulations to our friend Chris Nace, lead attorney for the Nace Law Group, accident and injury lawyers. Chris has been named a 2025 Law Dragon 500 leading plaintiff consumer lawyer. His dedication to justice and client advocacy continues to make a real impact. Also, congrats to Samantha Peters of the Nace Law Group. She was recently elected to the Board of Governors of the Trial Lawyers Association of Metropolitan Washington, D.C. Founded in 1979, the Nace Law Group is a Washington, D.C.-based family law firm that handles medical malpractice, personal injury, birth injury, legal malpractice, and consumer protection cases, offering aggressive advocacy for victims in Washington, D.C. and West Virginia. If you feel that you've been wronged, if you think that you've been wronged but aren't sure, contact the Nace Law Group, accident and injury lawyers, and schedule a no-obligation appointment. Call 202-902-7611 or visit WashingtonDCInjuryLawyers.com and tell the Nace Law Group that Al Galdi sent you. The Nace Law Group is outstanding. Chris Nace and the rest of the team do excellent work. They'll fight for you and your family. They can help you and your family make difficult decisions. So the Nace Law Group has recovered millions of dollars for the sick and injured. If you have a case, contact the Nace Law Group. Call 202-902-7611 or visit Washington, D.C., injurylawyers.com and tell the Nace Law Group that Al Galdi sent you. That's 202-902-7611 or Washington, D.C., injurylawyers.com. And make sure that you mention that Al Galdi sent you. The Nace Law Group, accident and injury lawyers. We're talking with Eric Flack, chief investigative reporter for WUSA9, about the saga of the Commander Stadium deal with D.C. I do get the skepticism from people about whether a Commander Stadium on the RFK Stadium site would have a positive economic impact for D.C. That said, we in D.C. do have multiple examples of pro sports venues providing positive economic impacts for D.C. in Capital One Arena and Nationals Park. MCI Center / Verizon Center / Capital One Arena revitalized the Chinatown area of D.C. Nationals Park has revitalized the Navy Yard area of D.C. Does Capital One Arena and Nationals Park having had positive economic impacts for D.C. suggest that a Commander Stadium on the RFK Stadium land would have a positive economic impact for D.C.? Or is it more each situation is its own individual entity, and what happened in one instance doesn't necessarily say anything about what might happen in another instance?
Well, the mayor and the commanders would certainly have you believe that it's an apples and apples comparison and that it worked. And I think Nationals Park is really the big one, although Capital One Arena, I mean, Chinatown was really nothing back when they built it. However many, back in the 90s. And Nationals Park, certainly, Navy Yard area was nothing compared to what it was before they built Nationals Park. And so, they would like you to think that that's, past will be prologue in this situation. The argument on the other side, obviously, is that there are limited amounts of dates at a football stadium. No matter how many Beyonce, Taylor Swift concerts you bring in, no matter how many WrestleManias you think you're going to get, it's not a 80-date. They want you to believe it, but it's not an 80-date sort of deal. And they have these projections, or it'll be like 80, 100 dates, but like so many of these dates are small conferences and using a concourse of the stadium. It's not really going to have major events at it that many days a year. So I think that is where people get where it worked here, so it's going to work there. That's the only chink in the armor of that argument, is that it's not the same deal. It's not really the same deal as a basketball arena. At Capital One, it's basketball and hockey and college events and concerts. That thing it's serving all sorts of different, events. And, Nationals Park stays pretty busy because of the baseball season, even if nobody's really going to games. So I hope, and I hope it will, but for the good of DC, which is where I live. But I think it's still a little bit of a leap to guarantee that, it's going to be another Navy Yard, so to speak.
Final question. President Donald Trump. Phil Mendelssohn this past Monday said that he has heard that a commander's plan B for if the D.C. Council does not approve the stadium deal in a timely manner is to seek intervention by President Trump. Said Mendelssohn, quote, "I've heard that from a number of people," end quote. How realistic is Trump getting involved, and what exactly could he do?
Well, you would think it's not realistic until you look at what's going on in D.C. right now, and I don't think you can rule out anything. I think we are living in a world where there is a lot of unpredictable things happening. The federal government has control over D.C.'s purse strings. This is what we are learning or being reminded of with our budget right now and with all the cuts that DC is being forced to make as part of the federal government cutbacks. So certainly there is some sort of a mechanism to force DC earmark dollars on the federal level. It would have to be approved by Congress to for a stadium. And the argument, even though the language was left open, it is pretty clear that the federal government approved the transfer of the land of the RFK site for a stadium. Like, let's be honest, that's what the thinking was. So, I think that there's, with the president and the relationship between, DC's government and the federal government and the way the money flow works, even though DC used to have complete autonomy, it has less autonomy now because of a shift in philosophy in the White House and on Capitol Hill about what it does with its money. I certainly think there's an avenue. I don't think we're going to get there. I still think they are going to work this out. And I think that DC Council is just not going to be bullied into a timeline. But Mendelson has already introduced legislation. Council Chair Mendelson has already introduced legislation that would allow council to come back. They're about to go on break. Allow them to come back in August and address a whole bunch of bills. They can address whatever they want, but the stadium is among the things they could address if they decide to come back off of break in August, which is their typical break. That August timeline, by the way, is completely acceptable by the commanders. The commanders are like, if we do it in August, we're good. So there still is a window where everybody gets what they want here. Now, a lot of these council members are threatening to take it into September. They want their break. We'll see what happens in the Cafe Milano meeting. Those are some of the kind of behind closed doors negotiations where maybe council is convinced to come back in August and get it done in a timeline that's acceptable to the commanders.
Politicians like their breaks.
Yes, they do. They work very hard, Al.
Yes, they do. Of course they do. Eric Flack, Chief Investigative Reporter for WUSA9. Eric, thanks. Have a great July 4th weekend.
You too, my friend.
Learning a new language opens the door to new friends, new cultures, and maybe even a whole new life. So why not start the journey today? There's over a dozen languages available to learn at your own pace so you can achieve your goals with material tailored to your individual proficiency level, interests, and time availability. I'm finally learning French after taking classes in high school and thrilled to finish what I'd started years ago. And my favorite part about Babbel is that it's dialogue-based. It helps me to actually practice conversations, and the speech recognition ensures I'm saying words correct them all. So get talking with Babbel. I want you to learn another language, so I'm teaming up with Babbel to gift you 55% off subscriptions, but only for our listeners at babbel.com/bluewire. Get up to 55% off at babbel.com/bluewire, spelled BABBEL.com/bluewire. Babbel.com/bluewire. Rules and restrictions may apply.
NetCredit is here to say yes, because you're more than a credit score. Apply in minutes and get a decision as soon as the same day. Loans offered by NetCredit or lending partner banks and serviced by NetCredit. Application subject to review and approval. Learn more at netcredit.com/partners. NetCredit. Credit to the people.
While, yes, the Nationals have the number one overall pick in the 2025 MLB draft, which will take place on July 13th and 14th, it is important to remember that there are really good players all over the place in MLB drafts. And take the Nats' best player, James Wood, as a prime example. This does not get talked about much, but James Wood is a second-round pick. The San Diego Padres took Wood out of IMG Academy in Florida in the second round of the 2021 MLB draft. He was not some top 5, top 10 pick. He was a second round pick. This past Tuesday, July 1st, marked the 1-year anniversary of the Nats promoting Wood to the majors, and Thursday ended up being quite the day for Wood, and what has become quite the season. The Nats outslugged the Detroit Tigers 11-7 at Nationals Park on Thursday evening to win the series 2-1. The Nats in MLB's 2025 regular season now are 37-50. The Tigers in this regular season now are an American League best 54-34. The Nats just took 2 out of 3 games against the best team in the American League. A really good series win for the Nats, and James Wood had some Thursday. So Wood on Instagram on Thursday afternoon announced that he will be participating in the 2025 T-Mobile Home Run Derby, which is happening at Truist Park in Georgia on Monday night, July 14th. 100% the right call to have Wood in this Home Run Derby. The Home Run Derby is a great way for MLB to promote stars. Wood is a star, and his national profile is rising. And for whatever it's worth, the Nats have a very good home run derby history, right? 2 Nats outfielders have won home run derbies. Bryce Harper won the 2018 home run derby, which took place at Nationals Park, and Juan Soto won the 2022 home run derby, which took place at Dodger Stadium in Los Angeles. And then Wood, in this 11-7 win over the Tigers on Thursday evening, was outstanding. He has the Nats starting left fielder and number 2 batter, went 5 for 5 with a solo homer, an RBI single, and 3 other singles. Yes, 5 for 5. Not a bad way to celebrate being in the home run derby. Wood, in a Nats 1-run second, had a 1-out opposite field solo homer to left field for a 6-3 Nats lead. Not a bad way to prep for the home run derby. This is James Wood's age 22 season. How about what he is doing in this regular season? Number 1 among all qualified Nats players in OPS at 958. Number 1 on the Nats in home runs at 23. And just getting away from the stats, already we can say that James Wood is legit. Already we can say that James Wood is a great MLB hitter. Look at how quickly we have been able to arrive at that declaration. That's how good this guy has been in his brief time at the major league level. Here was Nats manager Davey Martinez during his postgame session with reporters on Thursday night on James Wood.
Well, just watching him, over the years, close to 300 doesn't really surprise me. The big thing is when he gets the ball in the zone, he's really good. He's chasing less. He's hitting the ball. He's hitting the ball the other way, like we always talk about. He's pulling the ball when he needs to. So he's doing everything I've saw him do, in the minor leagues, throughout the minor leagues. So it's awesome to watch him go out there and hit the way he hits. I mean, he's been great.
Yes, he has been. I, on Thursday night, posted this on X, where you can find me, at Al Galdi. Washington, D.C. has the number 1 first/second-year quarterback in the NFL in Jaden Daniels, and the number 1 first/second-year hitter in MLB in James Wood. How nice is that, right? The Commanders' Jaden Daniels and the Nats' James Wood, 2 young superstars. The Nats in this 11-7 win over the Tigers on Thursday evening were tremendous offensively. The Nats scored 11 runs, totaled 15 hits, worked 3 walks, and went 6 for 17 with runners in scoring position. The 15 hits were 2 home runs, a double, and 12 singles. Paul DeJong, he is the Nats starting DH and number 6 batter, went 1 for 4 with a 3-run homer. DeJong in a Nats 5-run first had a 1-out opposite field 3-run homer to right center field for a 5-3 Nats lead. Maybe the feel-good moment of this game. So good to see DeJong do that in just his 3rd game back of having been on the 10-day injured list from April 16th to July 1st. This due to a fractured nose that he suffered in the Nats' 3-0 win at the Pittsburgh Pirates on April 15th. And, when the Nats reinstated Paul DeJong from the 10-day IL, I said, I don't know how much of DeJong we're going to be seeing with Brady House entrenched as the Nats' number 1 third baseman and C.J. Abrams, of course, entrenched as the Nats' number 1 shortstop. But we actually ended up seeing DeJong play in each of the 3 games in this series against the Tigers. Alex Call, he is the Nats' starting right fielder and number 5 batter, went 3 for 5 with a 2-run single, an RBI single, and another single. Are you aware of the production that Alex Call is giving the Nats this season? Might he be emerging as a, dare I say it, trade chip for the Nats? Question mark. I don't know if we can go that far, but he's having a good season. Alex Cole, now for this regular season, 198 plate appearances, OPS of 794. He has been productive. And I mentioned Brady House. He is the Nats starting third baseman and number 7 batter, went 1 for 5 with a 2-run single. The Nats starting pitcher in this 11-7 win over the Tigers on Thursday evening was Jake Irvin. He was coming off a really bad outing. Irvin in the 15-9 win at the Los Angeles Angels late night this past Friday night officially allowed 9 runs, 8 earned in 4 and a third innings. Irvin in this win over the Tigers on Thursday evening once again had a bad first inning, but he once again was really good after the first inning. This pattern has been amazing, how often this pattern has held in Jake Irvin starts this season. So Irvin on Thursday evening, 3 runs in 6 innings. He gave up just 3 hits, which were a home run and 2 singles. He issued 3 walks. He recorded 4 strikeouts. He threw a whopping 107 pitches, 68 strikes versus 39 balls. So all 3 of the runs that he allowed, all 3 of the hits that he allowed, and 1 of the walks that he allowed came in the top of the first, during which he gave up a 2-out, full count, 3-run homer by Spencer Torkelson on a moonshot to center field. The homer went a projected 428 feet per Statcast, concluded a 10-pitch plate appearance in which Torkelson was down at 1.12. Jake Irvin for this regular season is dead last among all qualified starting pitchers in the majors in first inning ERA, 9.53. The Nats' Mitchell Parker is next to last, 8.47. Yeah, the Nats have the 2 worst first inning pitchers in the majors. But Irvin, beyond these first innings, has done well. His overall stats, 18 starts, ERA of 4.71, whip of 1.29. And did you know that Irvin has been the workhorse of the Nats pitching staff? He's number 1 on the Nats in innings pitched, 105. A negative for the Nats in this 11-7 win over the Tigers on Thursday evening was the bullpen. I know, shock face, but 4 Nats relievers combined to allow 4 runs in 3 innings. Cole Henry allowed 2 runs in 2/3 of an inning. He, in the top of the 7th, allowed 2 runs on 4 singles. Jose A. Ferrer faced 1 batter and got 1 out. Brad Lord allowed 2 runs in 1 inning. He, in the top of the 8th, allowed 2 runs on a hit by pitch, a wild pitch, a walk, an RBI single, and an RBI ground out. But Kyle Finnegan tossed a perfect top of the 9th for the save. Also regarding the Nats bullpen, reliever Andrew Chafin is back. The Nats on Thursday afternoon announced having reinstated Chafin from the 15-day injured list, which he had been on since June 14th, retroactive to June 11th. This due to a right hamstring strain. The corresponding roster move was the Nats optioning reliever Ryan Ludis to AAA Rochester. There was something else from Davey Martinez's postgame session with reporters on Thursday evening that stood out to me. Take a listen to this from Martinez on this win over the Tigers.
Just the way these guys played. I mean, they were relentless tonight again. Their bats were really good all day, and Jacob, after the first inning, settled down, gave us 6 strong innings, which was awesome, man. Hey, I can't do what I do without those guys in there, so I appreciate what they do. Thank you to the Washington Nationals for giving me the opportunity to do what I love to do, so let's go. I traded all in for another World Series, I can tell you that, so but let's keep doing what we're doing. I mean, we're playing well right now.
Okay, so did what stood out to me stand out to you? Davey Martinez, quote, "Thank you to the Washington Nationals for giving me the opportunity to do what I love to do," end quote. Now let's establish this. This win for Davey Martinez on Thursday evening was his 500th regular season win as Nats manager. This was a milestone win, so him thanking the Nats may have simply been about the milestone. But keep in mind, the Nats on August 22nd, 2023, officially announced having agreed with Martinez on a multi-year contract extension. The extension reportedly was a 2-year contract extension with an option for a 3rd season. That 3rd season is next season, so he is not under contract for next season. And the belief is that the deadline by which that option must be exercised is sometime in this month of July. Davey Martinez, quote, "Thank you to the Washington Nationals for giving me the opportunity to do what I love to do," end quote. Maybe that was just Davey Martinez being nice and we shouldn't read anything into him saying that. But maybe that was him, shall we say, lobbying, or shall we say, buttering up management, or shall we say, making it clear that he wants to remain as Nats manager, that he wants management to exercise that club option for him to be the team's manager for the 2026 season. We just don't usually hear Davey Martinez say stuff like that. Quote, "Thank you to the Washington Nationals for giving me the opportunity to do what I love to do." End quote. Next up for the Nats is a 3-game series against the Boston Red Sox at Nationals Park. Game 1, Friday morning at 11:05, Michael Soroka will be the Nats starting pitcher. Game 2, Saturday afternoon at 4:05, Mitchell Parker will be the Nats starting pitcher. Game 3, Sunday afternoon at 1:35, the Nats starting pitcher is to be announced. And that'll do it for you and me for now. Keep the feedback coming. You can hit me up on X at Al Galdi. You can email me the Al Galdi podcast at yahoo.com. Monday show, episode 1107. We'll have a lot for you on the Commanders. Also on Monday show, we'll talk Nationals and Orioles. The Nats this weekend have a 3-game series against the Boston Red Sox at Nationals Park. The O's this weekend have a 3-game series at the Atlanta Braves. Have a great weekend. Happy July 4th, and we'll talk to you on Monday.
When our ownership group started on this journey 2 years ago, we laid out 3 clear priorities: build a championship caliber team, improve fan experience, and make a positive impact on this community. Today's announcement is a key part of that vision. Let's come home.